so much for joining this Soul Circle. I hope that you have a great time together with your group. I wish that I could be in each and every one of your groups, hearing your stories, learning from each other. But instead, I'm going to do these little videos at the beginning of your time together to help get discussion started and give you a little bit of my perspective on the topic of the day. And this first topic that we're going to start with today is the topic of identity. Who are you? John Calvin, who was the father of the Reformed movement in which Presbyterians find themselves in, he said that wisdom begins when we know ourselves and we know God. When we know God and we know ourselves. Well, it's often easy to make the study of God as if something is out there, but knowing ourselves sometimes is even more difficult because to get to know ourselves, well, it gets a little personal and we have to face maybe some things about ourselves that we don't really like. But even when we do get to know ourselves, then we start to see ways and patterns of being that maybe we're stuck in, some deep grooves of how we've learned to operate. And it's hard to know how to break out of those. And the story is told that the Desert Fathers, many centuries ago, noticed patterns in their young monks. And they noticed certain ways of being that they began to identify. Oh, John and Peter, they tend to do this, whereas Francis and James, they tend to do this. And they began to notice that there were 9 different ways of being that they identified in the young monks that they were working with. And that wisdom has been passed down. It's what we now know as, in modern times, as the Enneagram. And along with the Desert Fathers, there's rumors that it began in also Sufi mystics. But this deep wisdom about how human beings are wired is something that was kind of hidden and secret knowledge within the Catholic Church, used mostly for priests and spiritual direction. But in about the last 50 years, it's become more and more accessible to people like you and me, more and more popularized. And it's something that can help us pay attention to where are our grooves, where are our patterned ways of being, and then not just who are you and where are you stuck, not are you just stuck in that way, that identity, but what is the path of transformation for you, the way you were made, the way you have been programmed. And so that's what I love about the Enneagram, is it's not just describing who somebody is, but it's giving them a path and an idea of transformation, because what transformation and growth looks like for me is probably not what it looks like for you. So I'd like to give you just a quick overview of what the Enneagram is. The Enneagram is at its most basic form, talks about 3 different ways of being in the world. You can relate to the world through your body, or through your heart, or through your head. And each of those, what they call centers of intelligence, have a primary emotion. The body types have a primary emotion of anger. The heart types, a primary emotion of sadness or grief. And the head types, a primary emotion of fear. Now, within each of those 3 centers of intelligence, there are 3 ways of dealing with that core emotion. And so I'm going to just go through each of those types. And as I read through these, I'll also put them up on the screen. I invite you to just make some notes about which one sounds like you. You may end up with a list of 5, or you may end up with knowing exactly which one is you. All of that is really common. Some people take years and years to figure out what their Enneagram type is, but it really is about this noticing yourself that is so valuable, and just the process of trying to figure it out is what helps you to get to that. So I'm going to start with type 8, which sounds weird when there's 9 types to start at the end, almost the end, and go forward. But type 8 is the very first head type. The very first body type. It's the very first body type. And the type 8 is sometimes called, and I'm just going to read this directly from the cpenneagram.com site. Type 8 is sometimes called the boss or the challenger. 8s tend to be oriented towards strength and power. 8s usually move toward conflict and confrontation more easily than other types. They also have more ready access to anger than most of the other types. 8s focus their attention on creating order out of disorder, the big picture, and who has the power. They have big energy, which can be intimidating to those around them, but they can often underestimate their impact on others. They can be excessive, impulsive, generous, and protective of others. They are natural leaders, but can have a blind spot when it comes to expressing vulnerability. The next type is type 9. Type 9 is sometimes called the mediator or the peacemaker. 9s make good mediators because they can naturally see all sides of an issue and feel motivated to reduce conflict and create harmony. They are usually affable and easygoing, and they focus their attention on getting along with other people. They tend to be out of touch with their own anger and agenda because having strong opinions might invite conflict with others, which they dislike and so habitually avoid. 9s often have a hard time saying no and taking a stand for their own desires, and so can say yes when they mean no, and can be passive-aggressive when their unacknowledged anger leaks out or gets acted out. And then we have type 1. Type 1 is sometimes called the perfectionist. It's called the perfectionist in that they tend to view the world in terms of how it matches or doesn't match what they view as perfect or ideal. Their focus of attention is on whether things are right or wrong, doing the right thing, noticing and correcting errors, and working hard to improve things. They have a strong internal critical voice that comments on the things they do, and they can be critical and judgmental of others. Because of their orientation toward right and wrong, they want to make sure others are also doing the right thing, so they correct others, often thinking they are being helpful. They usually conform to rules and standards and tend to be idealistic reformers. They are often people of high integrity. Their central challenges include managing their own anger and self-criticism. So those are the body types. And maybe you relate to one or the other, remembering that their core emotion is anger. And for the 8s, their anger is very expressed and out there and forward. For the 1s, their anger is repressed, where there's anger under the surface, but they're always holding it back. And for the 9s, their anger is denied. Like, who, me? I'm not angry at all. So think about those and think if you may relate to some of those head types. And let me now share with you what the heart types are. Type 2 is sometimes called givers or helpers, but an even better title is the befriender, as 2s want to create rapport and connection with people. They usually give strategically in that they can be afraid to ask for what they need, so they give to others as a way of making themselves important and implicitly inviting others to meet their unspoken needs. They tend to be friendly, upbeat, and generous to a fault. Their focus of attention is on other people, important relationships, and what other people think and feel about them. They pay a lot of attention to whether or not others like them, and they strive to be indispensable and approved of in the eyes of others. They are very empathic with others, but they can be out of touch with their own feelings and needs and overgive compulsively to others. Type 3 is sometimes called the performer, and they tend to view the world in terms of tasks, goals, and achieving success. Their focus of attention is being perceived as successful and getting a lot done. They tend to think in terms of objectives and organize their lives around those objectives. They are good at matching the ideal model of how something should be done in terms of material success and cultural ideas of achievement. They usually focus on doing at the expense of feeling and being. They can have a difficult time slowing down and knowing what they are feeling, but they are very good at getting a lot done in the most efficient way. Their main challenges are knowing what they really think and feel, and not just what looks good to think and feel, and slowing down and not doing anything. Type 4 is sometimes called the artist. They tend to have an artistic or aesthetic sensibility. They value authenticity, and they are typically comfortable with a wide range of emotions, including pain. Because they live more in their feelings than other people, they can at times over-identify with their emotions. They focus their attention on their internal world, the status of their connections, and the aesthetic aspects of their environment. In relationships, they value depth and the genuine expression of feelings. They tend to be idealistic and creative, but they can at times get caught up in longing, melancholy, or a focus on the past. So when we think about this heart type, you can see as I was reading the descriptions how this looks. For the Enneagram 4, which happens to be my type, the emotions are the sadness is very expressed. I feel the sadness. I see it out there in the world. It's very much foot forward for me. Whereas for the 2 says, I don't feel sadness, you feel sadness, and they want to repress it. They're kind of pushing it down in service of others. And then for the 3, their sadness or grief and their feelings are completely denied. They don't want to deal with them because there's stuff to get done, and they're very concerned about how they look in the world. And so they're gonna deny those feelings in order to push out into the world. So now let's get into the head types. The head types start with type 5. Type 5 is sometimes called the observer. They tend to be introverted and shy and less expressive emotionally than other types. They focus their attention on thinking, on interesting intellectual pursuits and interests, and creating boundaries to maintain privacy. They often have the sense that they have a limited amount of energy, and they are sensitive to other people potentially draining them of their finite stores of time and energy. They are usually well-boundaried and can withdraw to a safe place if they feel threatened by intrusion. They can be overly boundaried at times and have a hard time sharing themselves with others in relationship. Type 6 is sometimes called the devil's advocate or the contrarian. They have a rebellious streak and usually have some authority issues, both wanting a good authority and feeling a sense of mistrust in the presence of authority figures. They focus their attention on detecting threats to their safety and preparing in case something dangerous happens. They are naturally vigilant and can be either actively fearful phobic or strong and intimidating as a proactive move against fear, counterphobic. They tend to be loyal, analytical, and good at troubleshooting, but they can also struggle with paranoia and indecision. And lastly is type 7. Type 7 is sometimes called the epicure or the adventurer. 7s tend to be energetic, fast-paced, and optimistic. They focus their attention on fun and stimulating things to think about and do, on creating many options, and on planning. They are usually enthusiastic, fun-loving people who dislike feeling uncomfortable feelings, including sadness, anxiety, boredom, or pain. They are good at reframing negatives into positives. They usually have many interests, and they usually enjoy engaging socially with others. Their central challenges include dealing with difficult or uncomfortable emotions, showing up for conflict in relationships, and focusing on one thing at a time. So in these head types, we have the 6, where their fear is very expressed. I once knew a 6 who would always check the coffee maker in a hotel because she was certain someone had in some way poisoned it. And so she would never use the coffee maker in a hotel without rinsing it out because she had thought of all the ways things could go wrong. Then there's the 5, where their fear is kind of repressed. They're in their room dealing with their fear by finding out more information, but not really feeling their fear. And then in a 7, the fear is completely denied. Like, I am the life of the party. I'm planning the next adventure. 7s are sometimes even nurses or work in hospice because they deny themselves their own fear. They can be out there helping others. So those are the 9 types, and that's where we're going to start. And my invitation to you is to not to put you in a box, but to help you name the ways you may be in a box of personality, the ways you may be stuck in reactions and patterns. And to then, when you can identify that box, find where the door is to move out of it into growth and transformation. That's what the Enneagram offers us. So identify your 1 to 5 top types and answer the questions, and you can go ahead and go deeper with it by taking a class or listening to a podcast or taking a test online. I would love to hear what you learn about yourself. I want to know where you all are in this space and how we can be growing and transforming together. Thanks.